I'm a serious gamer. I'm sure I've just given at least a few of my viewers PTSD when remembering that awful ad that was everywhere a few years ago.
I'm a serious gamer, but I don't play games.
PP.
But in all seriousness, I'm like the most super casual gamer ever. Thankfully, due to me being a fetus both physically and mentally, I spent the first half of my life being mocked for playing games before it suddenly became the coolest thing ever, which gives me a very good perspective on how games and gaming evolved over the years. In the early 90s to the early 2000s, a lot of people saw gaming as this thing only loser nerds do because they aren't good at sports and get no hoes. Any media at the time portrayed them this way and also made them low-key autistic, which was weird. At this time, the only two acceptable games to play were COD.
Hey, I did pretty good. Hey, 30-29 on my second game of controller. I'm doing pretty good, no?
Or FIFA. Also, no girls allowed. That was super important too. They're smelly and have cooties. It was when streaming platforms blew up that gaming started to become a lot more socially acceptable. YouTubers and streamers were entertaining millions of fans and also making bread. And with gaming only getting bigger and bigger, with more people getting into it due to the gateway of entry getting much wider, game companies started making more money and putting more money into their games. It's also why games take so much longer to come out and why this piece of e-waste gathers so much dust. Surprisingly, the only thing that has stayed the same in the past 20 years of gaming is the salaries of the devs behind the games that people love so much. That actually gets me into my main point, because I love just yapping. What if you wanted to make a game but like the connections, team, and insane willpower needed to do one in the modern era? That's where we get to indie games, aka the thing that saved gaming in the 2010s. With gaming becoming bigger and better than ever, so did indie games. The 2010s is when the perception of gaming changed the most, and also coincidentally when the most beloved indie games began to release. Obligatory Undertale mention. I've gushed about how much I just love indie games enough on this channel already, and because I'm writing this right after the Omoket script, I feel like I'm repeating myself. But please, I need more people to play Undertale. It's really good, guys. I have very rose-tinted lenses about the 2010s because while I remember the highest of highs, I try to respectfully ignore the very low lows. At the time, however, these lows didn't feel like lows at all. Yandere Simulator, a game I can only describe as, I mean, technically it's a game. It's also infamous for being one of the most poorly designed, buggy pieces of shit I have ever had the displeasure of playing. Extreme Yandere Simulator. Woo. No! My original video focused a lot more on the person behind the game than the actual game itself. So it got me thinking, is the game actually that bad? Short answer, yes, but why? Well, after a few visits to the psych ward, I think I finally have an answer. So let's get started. Before I talk about Yandere Simulator, I firstly need to bring up Yandere Dev's first game, and the response it got, because it helps the viewer understand just how astronomically lucky Alex had to be to have Yandere Simulator last as long as it did. Before Alex's unfinished Requiem was regrettably unleashed upon the world, he originally tried to make a fighting game. Not much is known about the game, but apparently had the same spaghetti code that he'd become known for later.
Bet, check, turn.
But I'm getting ahead of myself. Alex wanted some criticism of his game and joined an IRC chat with Mike Zimont, some programmer for some nothing game. It's irrelevant, doesn't really matter to be honest. Alex hit him up and received some criticism from Mike. Nothing really soul crushing, just Mike being completely realistic with Alex, and he responded by throwing a tantrum. This goes on for quite a bit. What's important to know is that Alex took this very constructive criticism in the worst way, and and made it his life mission to upstage Mike. Wonder how that's going. Despite this whole event being a mix of embarrassing and funny, someone not being receptive to criticism isn't a crime. Hell, I don't even think this is that deep, if I'm being honest. My opinion changes a lot, however, once you realize that Mike Zemont is the programmer behind Skullgirls, one of the most well put together fighting games ever. One that has maintained its relevance for years. You know, that Skullgirls? Sorry, I just drank a protein shake because I'm so swole. You keep that in, Lynn. To have such a high-profile person willing to give you constructive criticism, and for you to just whine about it, shows a very clear lack of maturity. Here was the first problem of Yandere Simulator. The guy who makes the game can't take criticism for shit. And this is something Alex would never really grow out of. But we wouldn't see how bad this would get for a few more years. Right now, Alex was about to receive his big break with a new game he thought of. Poor, sweet, innocent, bright-eyed Alex had no idea that this is also the beginning of the end. Well, that's just a bit redundant. In 2013, Alex would release a game called Yandere Simulator, a game where the main character murders all of her love rivals to become her senpai's one and only. Oh my god, I'm so tired. You're watching a video on Yandere Simulator in 2024. You know what the game is, don't pretend. The game lacked a lot of core features, but had a lot of promise, especially since this was the first game that developer had ever made. We're just really stretching the definition of first ever game, aren't we? A lot of YouTubers seem to agree, as this became the new game to overreact to.
I'm building reputation with everybody before I go on my murderous rampage. Of course, that won't happen anytime soon.
This was another fortunate thing to occur. Alex was lucky enough to have this game played by some of the biggest content creators on the site at the time. All of these creators also gave the game a super high review. This brought a lot of eyes onto Alex, as he was having an influx of viewers coming to his channel, patiently waiting for updates to the game. Things were looking very, very good for Alex. He managed to make a game with a very interesting concept that people seemed very excited for. He also received a massive boost in attention due to YouTubers playing the game, who would also come back when the game updated, which basically acted as a free signal boost for any update that would release at that time. So things were looking incredibly bright for Alex. And this was before a lot of the other indie games started getting popular too. While people like Toby Fox turned this popularity into a fine career, Alex and Yandere Simulator would run into its first roadblock, and that was the creator himself. As I said like 5 minutes ago, hey, video. Alex was bad at taking criticism, and even this early on would lash out at his fans randomly. This wasn't frequent enough for people to really hold it against him, as a lot of people were really hopping on the Yandere Simulator train at the time, and Alex knew this. That's why he made a Patreon and an email for people to support and send him questions about the game. These two avenues of communication would become double-edged swords shortly after though, because Alex would start receiving a lot more emails than he was used to, and because he was just such a good guy who cared so much about his fans, he responded to each and every single one of them, leaving him with no time to work on the game. I'm sure it'll be fine. It's only the main reason people were giving Alex money, so that wasn't good. Alex was just forced to make a video on these emails because of how disruptive they had become.
The problem is email. This is a problem that I have mentioned various times in previous videos and blog posts. You're probably sick of hearing about it by now. I'm certainly sick of talking about it. I'd love to stop bringing up this subject, but that can only happen when it stops being the biggest problem I'm facing. I receive an avalanche of emails every single day. Depending on how much email I get, sometimes I spend between 8 and 12 hours going through my email, leaving me with no time left in the day to write code for the game.
To think the thing affecting the development of this amazing game is that our developer can't help but respond to his adoring fans. Are you smoking crack? This doesn't need a video. Just don't respond to emails.
Yandere Dev! Why don't you just—
Stop. I know what you're going to say. You want to tell me to get a secretary, right? Many people have advised me to get a secretary to filter my emails and answer dumb questions for me. I dislike this idea because I don't want to babysit a secretary until they're doing their job properly. I don't want to risk the secretary responding to questions incorrectly and spreading misinformation. I don't want to risk the secretary filtering my emails incorrectly and failing to send me important emails. I don't want to risk the secretary being lazy and going through my emails so slowly that I'm better off doing it myself. And I don't want to risk the secretary seeing spoilers or other confidential information and then talking about it on social media. In other words, I only trust myself to handle the task of checking my email and responding to questions and corresponding with volunteers. I don't want to risk someone else screwing things up. So no, I won't get a secretary.
But that's not what I was going to say! I was going to ask, why don't you just make multiple email accounts?
How would that help? If I had separate email addresses for volunteers, bugs, business inquiries, and fan art, then I would constantly be logging out of and logging into different accounts, which would cause me to lose even more time than I'm already losing. I would never make an email account where people can send me questions or suggestions, because I don't want to hear questions or suggestions. Making separate email addresses doesn't actually solve any problems.
Well then, why don't you just—
Stop. Stop right there. After 2 years of this nonsense, I've already heard every single possible suggestion about how I can solve my email problem. There is no idea that you could possibly suggest that I haven't already shot down. So don't send me your brilliant ideas for how to solve my email problems, because it's not going to work.
But hold on, pause. Have you heard of the Streisand effect? By making a whole ass video about this thing, you have brought more attention onto this thing and you'll probably just get more emails now. Also, blaming your fans for your inability to close the tab is insane. Very simple situation, please don't overcomplicate this. The issue people had at the time was that Alex wasn't working on the game. So his response was to not work on the game by responding to emails, and then after realizing the mass emails were a problem, taking more time away from development to make a whole ass video to tell people not to respond to emails. This was the second problem with Yandere Simulator. The creator's priorities were just all over the place. Only a madman would do such major mental gymnastics like this. And spoilers for the video, but this was only the tip of the iceberg for how insane this developer would get when making choices like this in the future. But right now, Alex had a bit of a bigger problem to deal with, and that was that his game was a piece of shit held together by hopes and dreams. First thing was the absolute state of the game aesthetic wise. Most of Yandere Simulator's assets are ripped straight from Unity, and because of that, they all lack any type of consistency. Look at a game like Cuphead, a game made on Unity. Now imagine if one of those levels just had a random store-bought asset in the background of one of the levels. You'd probably think, wow, this looks like arse. And that's exactly how I feel about Yandere Simulator, because wow, this looks like arse. Thankfully, people did offer to give Alex some assets to make the game not look like complete trash, and I hope they were all credited completely completely. You know, a lack of credit isn't good, but at least some of them were paid. I never really intend to look for volunteers. The original plan was to make a very simple game entirely by myself, using assets that were bought online as I proceeded with the game's development. People began contacting me and offering to help me out without asking for anything in return. The game grew in scope, and now it's a subject with multiple people contributing to it. I don't really wait for people to email me. I just work on the game, and sometimes people contact me and offer to create things for the game. 5k per month is nowhere near enough money required to finance a team of professionals to work on a game full time. The Patreon isn't the game's budget, it's my personal salary. It's like a tip jar. With that being said, I sometimes use the Patreon money to compensate volunteers for their help. This is rare because most volunteers only contribute 1 or 2 assets per month and aren't contributing a volume of work that deserves a salary. The purpose of the Kickstarter is to raise enough money to hire a team of professionals to work on the game full time for a period of several months or years. The purpose of the Kickstarter is not to line my pockets with cash. Can I get a review of my Alex voice in the comments, please? I'm trying to sound like I'm about to edge to Samus the entire time while I speak, and I'm not sure I'm doing a good job. Going off script for a minute, I just want to talk about the volunteers page on the Yandere Simulator official wiki. You can't see me, but I'm saluting. And like, I think people should be getting paid for what they're doing here. The first volunteer has made several art pieces for Yandere Dev's YouTube videos. I don't know if they've been paid. Someone's helped with the fucking dog shit code. Don't know if they've been paid. Somebody voiced all the male students. I don't know if they've been paid. Not to mention all of the people who voice dedicated characters like the rivals or some of the NPCs you can interact with. I wish things stopped here. I really wish this is where I stopped making fun of the ooh-woo tiny game developer of 3 million subscribers. But I haven't even talked about his god-awful code! Part 2. Oh wow, people really want this game to be finished. Alex would drop a progress report in Yandere Simulator, and one of the main things listed was making reusable code to speed up the progress. Before I say this bit, I need everyone to be aware that I got a 9 in my GCSE IT course. You know, the year where the grade boundaries were at their lowest, and I definitely got an easier test due to every single test being inside a classroom and on a hall. Basically, this makes me very knowledgeable about this stuff. I asked my comp sci teacher. Yandere Simulator runs really poorly apparently. I never noticed anything when these rich YouTubers with their super PCs were playing this game, so I'm sure it'll be fine for me to play the game on my low-end PC. A game like Yandere Simulator shouldn't really be this hard to run, even on a lower spec PC. A 6050 Intel i5 and 16 gigs of RAM should be more than enough for this game to run. So tell me why my PC is on fire right now. Someone who actually knows what they're talking about made an entire video just talking about the code of Yandere Simulator. The main issues with the code was that Alex didn't actually make his code with the intention of ever having to improve upon it in the future, and also used a lot of if-else statements where he really shouldn't have, causing the game to be running a bunch of if-else statements at every second, even if they weren't being used. This made the game run like shit, and for Alex to say nothing was wrong with his game's code and it ran fine.
Whoa. What?
Okay, something has become extremely apparent. Everyone complaining about low frame rate is a kid using a cheap laptop they got from their parents. You can't play any graphically intensive game at a high FPS on a cheap laptop. You need an actual gaming PC to play Yandere Simulator. Some games were never meant to be played on low-end machines, and Yandere Sim is one of those games. I'm consistently getting above 30 FPS, and when I watch YouTubers play Yandere Sim, they get 60 FPS. If you want to play Yandere Simulator at a high FPS, you need to get a job and buy a gaming PC, which means you first need to be old enough to work a job, which makes sense, because Yandere Sim should only be played by adults. I don't know which is more insulting, the person who's never worked a job in their life telling people to get jobs, or Yandere Dev saying that Yandere Simulator is a graphically intensive game. When I was streaming Yandere Simulator, Simulator, I had a 3070 i7 core and 16 gigabytes of RAM, and my laptop still sounded like it was about to take off. I would not call this game optimized at all, but someone from the heavens tried to bail Alex out. TinyBuild partnered with Alex and sent over a whole ass programmer to fix a lot of Alex's code so that it would be better optimized. They did this for mostly free too, so chalk that one up to Alex luck as well. However, when Alex looked at this new code, he was horrified. He found out that the code was actually viewable and functional. Alex gunned down the TinyBuild employee. Jesus Christ. He fired him, okay? He didn't kill him. $6,000 of debt later, and everything was back to running as it had before. Very poorly. There wasn't really a big update coming out that actually moved the game any closer to being done. Instead, we got a lot of joke updates that would get boring after like 10 minutes. When people started getting a little bit pressed of the lack of real updates, he blamed the volunteers who work for free for working too slow. Now that I'm thinking about it, that makes him sound horrible. So let me rephrase that. Alex blamed the volunteers who didn't do enough to be paid for why his game wasn't getting updated. If volunteers don't do enough to get paid but directly affect the time of updates, I feel like they're doing something pretty significant and should be getting paid. But hey, that's just me though. Well, you know, in the meantime, I think Alex could rework some stuff, like adding a different gendered senpai, fleshing out other parts of the game, or oh no, scrolling the Yandere Simulator update logs at this time is what I imagine early access purgatory is. There hadn't been any meaningful update for months, but let me tell you what was updated at the time. 47 mode, AI mode, bad romance mode, bad time mode, bancho mode, berserker mode, black hole mode, blade hair mode, blood maid mode, Serena? Wait, that's way funnier than the original name. There had not been a meaningful update to the game for almost that entire year, but we did get a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure added to the game, so all is forgiven really. Very gradually, over the course of last year, every animation and asset needed for the JoJo Easter egg was slowly created. It's been over 24 months since the conception of this idea, but finally, I've obtained everything I need in order to make this game Easter egg into reality. Many of you have probably seen the work in progress version of the Easter egg that was once accessible by simply pressing the J key at the Easter egg menu, but that's not the case anymore. As of this build, the JoJo Easter egg can only be unlocked by following a very specific set of steps, just like a traditional video game Easter egg. If you need a hint, here's what I'd say. Collect 8. Rooftop, laugh. You'll have to figure out what that means on your own. Yandere dev, shouldn't you be working on Osana instead of making Easter eggs? Don't worry. I only work on this Easter egg for a few minutes every month, getting it closer and closer to completion each time, until eventually it finally hit the finish line this month. My focus is still primarily on Osana. Wait, this took you 2 years to make? Hey, Yandere dev, remember that progress report where the first thing you listed was fixing some of your code? How's that going, champ? If you only work on these Easter eggs for a few minutes, then where is the rest of the game? His opinions on fans adding stuff to the game is also really unfortunate. Someone had made a mod that allowed you to change the height of the protagonist, and for whatever reason, Alex took massive offense to this and did his best to remove it in the next update. So now if you had the mod installed, this would happen. The creator would make a video on this, and Alex would actually comment, "No, you can f*** right off! You've got absolutely no clue what you're talking about, you fucking dumbass. If something is an obstacle to development, I'm going to eliminate the obstacle." The mod was presenting obstacles for me in the form of worthless bug reports, so I blocked it. Go stick your dick in a beehive if you have a problem with this decision, you dumb fuck. You know, 9 years after this comment, you still can't change the height of your protagonist. Oh, I will eliminate everything that gets in the way of Yandere Simulator's development. So, you know, at some point, I'm sure he's considered eliminating himself. You see, the joke is it's okay though, I can make those jokes. fucking depressed. I mean, like, have you looked at what I'm doing? It's a nice day out and I'm in my room with my blinds closed recording a Yandere Simulator video. I should just end it, to be honest. Ignoring my venting, the next two issues Yandere Simulator had is the fact that Alex is a feature creep and bad at PR. Like, really, really bad. And those two things combined made 2017 a really bad year for Alex. Firstly, Alex made a Yandere character to represent his fan base that he constantly used to strawman them, and has also murdered on multiple occasions, which really shows your confidence as a creator. Having your critics become a reoccurring character. He would literally just lie about a lot of things a lot of times, about development, claiming he was working on Yandere Simulator for 10 hours a day, while also streaming on Twitch for 3+ hours every day. He would also say that thinking about the game counted towards those working hours as well, which says it all. He began adding stupid additions to the Unity assets he swore he was going to change, meaning that all of the work that was being done here was basically pointless. Why are there 204 hairstyles for Unity asset Chan that you have to legally change? I think your top priority should be changing the model, right? There's no way he just keeps the models. The 44 extra modes Alex added on top of the base game, and all of the Easter eggs, which stopped feeling like Easter eggs when that was the only progress being made for the game for months. The game had been in development for 3 years by this point, and a lot of the core features in the game weren't even a thing yet. However, here is a bunch of side content that nobody wanted that Alex swears only takes up a little bit of his time, but the first rival of the game hadn't been implemented. If you even remotely care about Yandere Simulator, then the name Osana should be considered a trigger word, because Alex constantly mentions how he needs time to finish her and that she'll be added as soon as possible and it'll be awesome. The original plan was to have 10 rivals in the game, with Osana being added in January 2017.
With all of that said, it's still quite difficult to predict exactly how long it will take to implement the rest of Osana's interaction events. Her befriend betray storyline, her confession cutscene, her matchmaking suitor, a routine that guarantees she will never be alone, and all of the polish required to make her feel special and different from all the other students, and all of the other things that I may be forgetting to mention. I previously estimated that it would only take 1 more month to add Osana into the game, but now that I'm thinking about all the work that'll be required, it honestly seems like it's going to take at least 2 months.
Alex made a high-end video during this time while also saying that Osana was imperative for the game's Kickstarter. I feel like those two bits are kind of in contradiction, don't you think? Take time away from development to write up a script, record and edit a video, talking about how important these next few months of development are gonna be. Anyway, whatever. The January 2017 release date kind of signifies that things were going to change with the start of the new year. But like most New Year's resolutions, this fell through fast. January 2017, nothing. February 2017, nothing except a video where Alex explains why the update is taking so long. Wait a minute, again? This is the same mentality that a lot of people have, where they know they need to cram for an exam, but then off to play games for 8 hours and then study for 30. What? I got an F? How? All excuses used before. But this time, people were actually starting to get sick of it. March 2017 was Yandere Simulator's 3-year anniversary. Did Osana get added yet? No? Okay then. We'd have to go all the way to May to get any real news about Osana's development after Alex yet again fails to deliver the update, where Alex claimed that he had a lot of things to work on, so really this 4-month delay isn't even really that bad, and how he was just swamped with so much work. He really wanted that hammered in, by the way, that, you know, he couldn't find the time to do anything. New Sans Undertale mode added to Yandere Simulator. Again, keep in mind that highly edited videos were being made all the the time, he was streaming every day. Again, he was really hard at work every single day. It's just nothing was backing this up. Osana was supposed to be added at the start of 2017, and still, by September, she was nowhere to be found, despite her apparently being ready for release at any time. If things were looking antsy at the start of the year, people were losing their shit by the end of it. Before Alex managed to quell everyone's anger throughout the months, but people were like actually mad at him this time. Even some of his more loyal fans had enough of his bullshit and targeted the only thing that would actually make Alex wisen up: his money. Part 3. Oh my god, people want this game to be finished! The worst 2 months of Alex's life began. The game was receiving no meaningful updates for 11 months. People started digging into his past. Look, I made a video on this. He made a blog post trying to damage control where he tried to convince everyone that fucking laughing thinking about it. He tried to convince everyone that had been unsubbing from his Patreon are being misled by hater trolls, which pissed off his fans even more. And then he made a whole entire video after the fact. Hate and shame bad, lol. Okay, but like seriously, this was the very peak of Alex being bad with PR. So let's talk about it. Firstly, most of the video, Alex portrays himself as an anime girl for some reason. I still, to this day, do not understand why he did this. It's always weird niggas portraying themselves as tiny anime girls. Alex also calls anyone who has any issue with him a literal gremlin. Sure, people were doing a lot, but this was one of the biggest pity parties on YouTube.
They'll even stretch the truth as far as they possibly can, so they can continue believing that you are the monster they want you to be. For example, let's say you announce that you're going on a diet, but once a month you allow yourself to have a single piece of candy. They will stalk you and take pictures of you on the one day when you're eating a candy bar, make a collage of those pictures, and then claim that you're a fat pig who is constantly eating candy.
This is in reference to Alex barely working on his game. And the thing is, they aren't wrong. At the time, Alex was spending every day streaming, not him programming, but just random games he's interested in. And I don't think this is a problem. My problem comes from the fact that Alex says he spends nearly 12 hours a day working on the game, spends 4 streaming, 6 answering emails, and gets nothing done development-wise. This is without mentioning the fact that he has a team of unpaid amateurs working under him, and he isn't even utilizing it properly. But yeah, no, you're not lazy. It's just been a year without a proper update.
Well, if we're going to keep talking about these people, we need a name for them. We can't call them trolls because many of them aren't interested in provoking you directly. We can't call them liars because they actually believe all of the ridiculous things they say about you. And when they try to paint a twisted picture of you using cherry-picked information and out-of-context screenshots, they are technically using words you've actually said. And we can't call them critics, because they aren't judging you, they are judging a twisted image of you that only exists inside their imaginations. Let's say you're working on a project that relies heavily on receiving feedback from people. So you interact with your fans all the time to get their feedback. You have thousands of interactions, and most of them are pleasant. But maybe 1% of them are negative. The gremlins could compile a collage of just the times when you had negative interactions and try to depict you as someone who can't take criticism. If enough people are tricked into believing this gremlin propaganda, people will stop providing you with feedback and criticism, and your project will suffer. This is just one of the many ways the gremlins can indirectly sabotage your project, even if they never speak to you directly.
Like, I'm not even exaggerating here. To Alex, no criticism is valid, and him being an arse to people doesn't count because he's usually very positive. And any YouTuber talking about him is spreading false narratives and also looks like Corey Graves for some reason. He also says that he never portrayed his critics in a negative light. You know, he just made a strawman character that he murdered and called them literal gremlins in this video. I almost punched my mic. This was the peak of Alex's heat with the internet. This is when all the videos were being made and people were rinsing Yandere Sim. This video was an encapsulation with everything wrong with Yandere Simulator. The dev not working on the game because of some bullshit reason, blaming someone else for it, no forward planning, and just horrendous PR and time management. And even then, I can't say that things have changed in any way. In 2017, Yandere Simulator was in the worst state it has ever been in. People hated the game and its developer, but a lot of these problems could have been solved if one or two things were different. If the code was better and actually ran probably. If YouTubers never reviewed the game and put pressure on Alex, things could have changed. If Alex wasn't such a stupid idiot, then maybe we would actually have a game now. After 3 years of development, there really wasn't that much done. The main point of the game still hadn't released despite the dev saying it would be for a year. And while I'd normally just sit back and wait and let the guy cook, I really do think he wasted a bunch of time doing stupid shit and making a bunch of excuses for not adding the main parts of the game because he wasn't interested in it. I think if Alex was just honest about how he felt about working on the game, I think more people would have been receptive and understanding. But instead, Alex would double down and dedicate the next 4 years of his life to reach this deadline for the release of Yandere Simulator. Let's fast forward to that point and see what I was going to say that I was surprised, but this is just really sad. What could compel a person to work on a dying game for this long? Is he really that dedicated? Oh, you know, that's much more reasonable. After 10 real-life years, we have reached this point, and the game still barely f***ing works. Alex would release a video explaining how he felt about his game taking so long.
In June of 2014, I made it possible to drag corpses in Yandere Simulator, and I quickly noticed that I could stand on top of dead bodies. This made me wonder if it was possible to gather a bunch of corpses into a pile and use them as a stairway to climb over walls. I tried it, and it worked. I thought it was funny, so I posted a video of the corpse stairway, and I got a lot of responses. A few people actually suggested that I should stop developing Yandere Simulator and start developing a puzzle game about stacking schoolgirl corpses on top of each other. One person in particular said something memorable that has stuck with me for years. He said, "When you are developing a game and you accidentally discover something that is way more fun and interesting than your original plan for the game, you should abandon your original plan and start building your game around the new discovery you made." When I read that post, I immediately said, "No way! I'm not gonna change my priorities every time I see something cool."
I literally refuse to believe that dude. Reading the wiki is always so funny to me because a lot of the stuff on there is just things Alex says he's gonna do at some point. After 10 years, core mechanics are still lacking, and this video is just more of the same shit. Alex tries his best to excuse all of his mistakes and actually turn this into a positive thing.
If you go back and look through the oldest videos on my channel, you'll notice that almost every upload was about the latest feature that had been added to the game. Kidnapping, then senpai, then teachers, then pushing girls off the roof, then poisoning, then drowning, and so on. I had a list of every core feature that the game needed in order to be complete, and I was going down that list, implementing every feature one by one. I moved directly from one task to the next, making constant progress towards the completion of the game. During this period of time, I thought of Yandere Simulator as a checklist of tasks to do. I thought of the project as something that would be finished as soon as every task on the list was complete. However, I eventually stopped seeing Yandere Simulator that way. Over time, I started to see the game as something else. There were a lot of different factors that changed my perception of the game, but out of all of them, the one factor that had the greatest degree of influence was the game's sudden rise to popularity on YouTube, starting in 2015. Being able to watch people play the game I was developing was an eye-opening experience. I got to see what parts of the game were confusing to people, what features people enjoyed the most, and I got to hear people talk about the features they wished were in the game. Releasing a new build of the game, then watching people play the latest build on YouTube, and then making improvements to the game based on what I saw in those videos was a positive feedback loop that quickly became my daily routine. It was so rewarding and so fulfilling that it began to affect the way I viewed the game. Instead of seeing Yandere Simulator as a checklist of tasks to complete, I started seeing the game as something that should constantly be updated and improved based on what I observed from the fanbase. When I saw how much fun players were having with a mod that allowed them to pose the game's characters, I decided to add new functionality to the game that would help players be creative and build scenes. When I saw how much fun people were having with the game's murder mechanics, even though the game lacked an official rival to kill, I decided to add a new gameplay mode, where the player is given missions to kill specific students while meeting strict criteria, so that people could enjoy the act of eliminating targets and completing objectives even without a rival in the game. When I saw how much fun players were having by creating challenges for each other, such as killing all of the students at school in alphabetical order, I decided to make those challenges official, complete with new music and new features to make the process more enjoyable. When YouTubers described the features they wanted to see in the game, such as turning a decorative object into an object with actual functionality, I decided to add the features they wished for. Whenever I saw people find creative ways to enjoy the game, I couldn't resist the urge to enrich the experience for them. And whenever I heard people describe what they wanted to see in the game, I couldn't resist the temptation to make their wishes come true. As time passed, Yandere Simulator started to feel less like a checklist of tasks and more like an amusement park that I should fill with as many cool attractions as possible. Giving people new ways to have fun and get more enjoyment out of the game was very rewarding, and it always felt like a meaningful way to spend my time. So I gradually began to focus less on my checklist and focus more on just making Yandere Sim into a really fun amusement park.
Yeah, but I think 44 different modes are a bit excessive. It's pretty sneaky what he did here, saying people asked for these additions, but just glosses over the fact that when people spent an entire year asking for Osana, he just kind of called them gremlins and f***ed off.
At the beginning of the game's development, I was only concerned with one thing: completing a checklist of tasks. But over time, I observed that people were finding interesting ways to enjoy the game, even though it lacked an objective. This showed me that Yandere Simulator had the potential to provide many more forms of entertainment than originally intended. So I updated my priorities, and I started expanding the game in multiple different directions. Instead of focusing exclusively on giving the game an objective, I started filling the game with tons of fun activities. And I took the time to collaborate with amazing people to make awesome videos for my YouTube channel. I observed what the community enjoyed, and I adjusted my priorities accordingly. Instead of keeping Yandere Simulator locked to one path, I allowed the game to become something that is free to change and improve whenever I make new observations and discoveries. In short, I did exactly what that anonymous guy from 2014 suggested, even though I initially rejected what he had to say. These decisions contributed towards Yandere Simulator spending more time in development than I originally anticipated. But that's because the game evolved into something with much more to offer than what was initially planned. And I can't really see that as a bad thing. I don't feel that it was a mistake.
The problem was that you did that for a whole year and didn't tell anyone. In fact, on multiple occasions, the excuses you gave were that they didn't take up any time, or that they were just very important to the game's development, and they weren't. You blamed other people who worked for free too, behind the lack of updates, and are surprised why people are mad at you? Thank you for this admission of guilt, I guess. It only took 5 years. I'm not watching any more of this. At exactly 10 minutes in, this dude has managed to completely wreck my brain, and now I want to end it. The issue that plagued this game is that the dev being a feature creep, but says that he doesn't believe he made a mistake. I mean, I guess you've made a bigger one, so this doesn't look too bad in the grand scheme of things. But to see that the dude has not developed in any way since the first year of development says it all. The decline of Yandere Simulator is something I was just praying for. Not really. I'm not that big of a hater. But to be honest, I will always prefer an indie game do well than end up in this state because it's just miserable. This game had a really cool concept and the developer honestly had good ideas sometimes, but it's all just hidden under his terrible work ethic and overall terrible decisions. He's also a nonce. Yandere Simulator should act as a cautionary tale for all game developers. Don't get arrogant, be open to good criticism, don't be a dick to your fans, and don't lie to them either. Be honest and upfront. Don't spend 2 years making a JoJo Bizarre Adventure meme. Thanks for watching. Man, I've been on a fucking roll this month. That break really did me well actually, because I'm feeling re-energized and want to make more content. Segue to talking about the $5 channel members. Killer B, Some Dude, Levi _ Sabin, The Wolf Drake, Hobby Yellow in parentheses infected, Nate Rassman, Israfel's Fire, Ant, Pwep, Nokocho Official, Grizzly Bear 1996, and Kinda Snowy. You lot are just super cool for letting me scam you. Hey, you got this video a week early, right? That's cool. Anyway, if this video gets 100k in a week, I will stream Yandere Simulator again, but actually try to complete objectives. Really hoping that doesn't happen again. But yeah, I'm gonna get back to work. Have a good day. See ya, lads.